Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International for the headlines. India's devastating COVID surge accelerated further with more than 400,000 new cases recorded in just 24 hours as it opened its faltering vaccination program to all adults. Australia on Saturday warned those breaking its India travel ban could face 5 years in jail. A 6.8 magnitude earthquake struck off Japan's northeastern coast, according to authorities, but no tsunami warning was issued. Thousands of people visited the Great Wall of China during the May Day holiday as the rest of the world continues to struggle to contain the COVID pandemic. India's devastating COVID surge accelerated further today with more than 400,000 new cases recorded in just 24 hours as it opened its faltering vaccination program to all adults. Take a look.
Half of my family is right now positive. So now everybody wants us to get vaccinated. Won't completely protect us, but it will ensure that even if we get infected, we'll recover fast. So that's a necessity now to get vaccinated.
So I'm here with two of my other friends. I informed as many as I could, but then the slots were limited and only a few of them could get slots to come here or the other sites that were open for today. I really hope everyone gets this done as soon as possible and does not differentiate between which vaccine is given.
A crowd of around 100 people formed outside one Delhi hospital on Saturday as the hospital attendant came out regularly to call out numbers to people who had been booked. Following the recent surge, exports of the AstraZeneca vaccine by India's Serum Institute and of Bharat Biotech's homegrown Covaxin have now been frozen to prioritize India's needs. Until now, only frontline workers like medical staff, people over 45, and those with existing illness have been given vaccines. But even this more modest program has stumbled with some areas running out of shots and others throwing them away because of a lack of demand, in part because of the recent surge. On Saturday, the program was expanded to all Indians over 18, equating to around 800 million or 600 million people, even though many states said they have insufficient stocks to do so. Millions of younger people, terrified by the current situation and desperate to get inoculated, registered on the government's digital platform. India reported more than 400,000 cases 24 hours, a global record, but experts say the official infection and death figures fall far short of the true picture. Australia on Saturday warned those breaking its India travel ban could face 5 years in jail. People arriving in Australia from coronavirus-ravaged India could face 5 years in jail as the country strengthens an earlier travel ban the government announced on Saturday in a bid to prevent the outbreak from spreading to its shores. From Monday, any traveler into Australia who has been in India in the past 14 days could face fines and jail time, adding to a temporary ban announced earlier this week, which will remain in place until at least May 15. The threat came after travelers on indirect flights from India exposed a loophole in the government's attempt to temporarily block arrivals from the South Asian nation. The announcement, which is the first to specifically threaten jail for those breaching a travel ban, was labeled outrageous by Human Rights Watch. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris confirmed the travel restrictions between the U.S. and India starting next week due to rampant spread of COVID-19 in the country as she heads back to Washington. Take a look.
On the issue of India, we have announced that there's going to be a travel restriction starting on Tuesday on the advice of the Centers for Disease Control, our COVID-19 experts, medical experts, our national security advisors. And as it relates to the people of India, we have a long-standing, decades-old relationship with India, with the Indian people. in particular around public health issues. Tonight, in fact, we're going to be sending a plane with supplies that will include oxygen, and with an expectation that that will provide some level of relief.
At least 16 COVID patients and 2 nurses died on Saturday in the latest in a series of hospital fires in India, according to officials, as the country's healthcare system buckles under a surge in cases. There were around 50 other patients at the 4-story hospital in Bharuch in the western state of Gujarat when the blaze began at 1 a.m. local time. It has since been put out. The death toll stood at 18. Local police official Rajendra Singh Chudasama told AFP, including 16 patients and 2 nurses. Primary investigation revealed that the fire started due to a short circuit in the ICU of the hospital. On April 23, a fire on the outskirts of Mumbai killed 13 patients. A few days after, another blaze left 22 people dead at another clinic, also in Maharashtra state. The Irish government has announced a phased relaxation of its lockdown measures over the next 6 weeks. To tell us more about it, joining us live is Ms. Rowana Biancarino from our EBC Ireland Bureau. Hello, Rowana.
Hi, Alma. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. How are you? Good to hear you back.
I'm doing well as well. Yes, great to see you. So for my updates here in the Republic of Ireland, Irish Prime Minister Micheál Martin addresses the nation, unveiling how pandemic restrictions will be relaxed in the coming weeks and months. He says the strategy is working before announcing the first 2 reopening phases that will begin this month. Let's listen to his announcement.
Ahead. The good news is that the strategy is working. Because of your hard work and sacrifices, we are in a better place. We now believe it is safe to continue moving forward in 2 phases over the coming months. The next phase will commence on the 10th of May, when a series of really important and very welcome freedoms will be restored. These include the resumption of inter-county travel. Click and collect services and retail by appointment can begin at all non-essential retail outlets, with full reopening on the 17th of May.
So the Irish Prime Minister Micheál Martin announced plans to lift lockdown restrictions here in Ireland starting on May 10, including vaccine bonus perks for those who have had both jabs. Hope is returning, Martin said. Ireland has had more than 248,000 cases and 4,899 deaths from coronavirus. People who are fully vaccinated can meet each other indoors, with up to 3 households present. They can also meet members of one unvaccinated household indoors as long as they are not at high risk. Ireland will allow museums and galleries to reopen, as well as hairdressers. Small groups will be able to meet outdoors, and up to 50 people will be able to attend religious services, funerals, and weddings. Outside retail and click and collect services will also restart, while non-essential retail will fully reopen on May 17. Hotels and other guest accommodation will open from the 2nd of June. Ireland has administered more than 1.5 million vaccine doses, he said, covering nearly 30% of those aged over 16. Martin stressed that Ireland was sticking to a gradual, responsible reopening. Alma?
All right. Thank you very much, Rowana, for your updates there in Ireland. Looking forward to more updates coming out of Ireland. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Alma. I'm Rowana Biancarino, correspondent in the Republic of Ireland, and we live in interesting times.
The World Health Organization said it had listed the anti-COVID-19 Moderna vaccine for emergency use. The listing procedure helps countries unable to assess a vaccine's effectiveness themselves, have access as quickly as possible, and allow the COVAX vaccine sharing scheme and other partners to distribute it to poorer countries. The U.S. vaccine is the fifth jab to earn WHO's emergency listing. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration issued an emergency use authorization for the Moderna vaccine on 18th of December last year, and a marketing authorization valid throughout the European Union was granted by the European Medicines Agency on the 6th of January this year. WHO said in a statement that its Strategic Advisory Group of Experts on Immunization, or SAGE, had found the Moderna vaccine to have an efficacy of 94.1%. The other vaccines listed for emergency use by WHO are Pfizer-BioNTech, AstraZeneca, Serum Institute of India, and Janssen. Moderna on Thursday said it expected to produce up to 3 billion doses of its vaccine in 2022 through new funding commitments to boost supply at manufacturing sites in Europe and the U.S. Pfizer-BioNTech said Friday they have asked European regulators to authorize their COVID-19 vaccine for 12 to 15-year-olds, a move seen as a crucial step toward achieving herd immunity. The companies already filed a similar request with U.S. authorities earlier this month. Their vaccine is currently only approved for use in people aged 16 and over. Ugur Sahin, co-founder and CEO of Germany's BioNTech, on Thursday said the jab could be available for those age groups from June if EU approval is granted. If approved, the green light would apply to all 27 EU member states. Pfizer and BioNTech added that they also plan to seek authorizations with other regulatory authorities worldwide. No coronavirus vaccines are currently authorized for use on children. While children and teenagers are less likely to develop severe COVID, they make up a large part of the population, and inoculating them is considered key to ending the pandemic. BioNTech and Pfizer are also racing to get their jab approved for younger kids from 6 months upwards. The BioNTech-Pfizer shot is based on mRNA technology and was the first COVID-19 jab to be approved in the West late last year. In other news now, a 6.8 magnitude earthquake struck off Japan's northeastern coast on Saturday, according to authorities, but no tsunami warning was issued. At least 3 people were injured by Saturday's jolt, which produced strong shaking along parts of the eastern coast and was also felt in Tokyo. There were no immediate reports of major damage, according to local media. The U.S. Geological Survey said the mid-morning quake hit at a depth of 47 kilometers in the Pacific off Ishinomaki in Miyagi Prefecture, near the epicenter of a huge 2011 quake which triggered a towering tsunami, killing more than 18,000 people. Japan's meteorological agency said Saturday there was no tsunami risk, but an agency official warned strong aftershocks may hit the region in about a week, adding that expected bad weather may trigger landslides following the latest ground shaking. 2 people were slightly injured after windows were broken at a station in Onagawa, Miyagi, according to public broadcaster NHK. NHK also said a woman in her 80s was treated in hospital after she fell at a supermarket in Fukushima. Local railway firms suspended services, NHK said, while elevators stopped in some buildings in Miyagi. Fukushima nuclear plant operator TEPCO said the facility, which melted down in the wake of the 2011 tsunami, did not show any abnormalities after the latest earthquake. The UN Security Council called Friday for an immediate end to violence in Myanmar, as stated in an ASEAN plan, giving unanimous approval to a statement watered down to satisfy China and Russia. The plan, which also calls for the naming of an envoy from the Association of Southeast Asian Nations to address the crisis triggered by the February 1 military coup, should be applied without delay, according to the Council's statement. It was approved after a closed-door meeting of the Council and forced Western countries to make concessions. to China, Myanmar's main backer, and Russia to win passage. At their request, the Council eliminated clauses that said it once again strongly condemned violence against peaceful protesters and reiterated their call on the military to exercise utmost restraint. A diplomat speaking on condition of anonymity explained the changes, saying, quote, "What we must avoid is losing council unity to the point of making it irrelevant," unquote. Friday's session was convened by Vietnam to present the conclusions of a recent ASEAN summit in Indonesia. The statement that was ultimately passed calls for the UN Special Envoy to Myanmar, Christine Schreiner Bergener, who is currently touring the region, to be able to visit Myanmar as soon as possible. Diplomats said the envoy, who is currently based in Bangkok, once again had her request for a visit to Myanmar denied. A Singapore hospital has locked down 4 wards for or after detecting coronavirus cases, according to authorities, a rare outbreak in a country that has largely brought the virus under control. After a partial lockdown and rigorous regime of testing and contact tracing, COVID-19 had almost disappeared in Singapore, with authorities in recent months reporting hardly any local transmission. But there were 16 infections on Thursday, the highest daily count since July last year, and another 9 on Friday. 13 are linked to Tan Tock Seng Hospital, where a Filipino nurse who had been fully vaccinated was the first to develop and report symptoms earlier this week. 4 wards of the hospital, one of Singapore's biggest, have been locked down with movements restricted and dedicated staff deployed to work there, said its chief executive Eugene Saw. The other locally transmitted cases have been linked to an immigration official working at the airport. The emergence of new virus clusters is a worrying trend. According to Health Minister Gan Kim Yong, he told this to reporters at a virtual press conference. There are also concerns a sustained rise in local infections could scupper a quarantine-free travel bubble between Singapore and Hong Kong, due to begin on May 26 after an earlier failed attempt. And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Welcome back. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu donated blood for victims of a stampede at a Jewish pilgrimage site that killed at least 45 people now. Take a look.
למען אזרחי ישראל באתי לתרום דם כאקט של הזדהות עם הפצועים וכאקט של הזדהות עם הטרגדיה הנוראית שקרתה כאן. ברגעי מבחן העם שלנו מתלכד.
Now, Israel on Friday started burying their victims of the stampede at the Jewish pilgrimage site that killed at least 45 people as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu promised an investigation into one of the nation's worst disasters. According to the Times of Israel, the disaster, which began at 1 a.m. on Friday morning, took place when huge crowds of ultra-Orthodox pilgrims were making their way along a narrow walkway with a slippery metal flooring that ended in flights of stairs. People began to slip and then fall, and others fell upon them. And then a calamitous stampede ensued, and the fitness of the walkway, whether it was approved for use and by whom, are now matters that seem certain to be a focus of the various investigations. Israel has fully vaccinated more than half of its 9.3 million population against the coronavirus, but restrictions remain on large public gatherings. Officials had warned overcrowding could lead to a spike in infections and only authorized 10,000 to attend. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed during a visit to the scene of Israel's worst ever peacetime disaster that the investigations would be comprehensive, serious, and detailed. In other news, at least 21 people were killed and nearly 100 wounded on Friday when a car bomb exploded in an Afghan city south of the capital that President Ashraf Ghani blamed on the Taliban. The blast occurred in a residential area of Pul-e-Alam, capital of Logar province, as people were breaking their Ramadan fast and came on the eve of the formal start of the U.S. military's withdrawal from Afghanistan. Interior Ministry spokesman Tariq Aryan told reporters that the blast left 21 people dead and 91 others wounded, updating an earlier toll. President Ghani blamed the Taliban for this attack. The Taliban didn't make any immediate comment. The blast comes a day before the U.S. military formally begins to pull out its remaining troops from the violence-racked country. Even as the U.S. military withdraws its remaining 2,500 troops from Afghanistan, fighting has continued unabated across several provinces. Overall, violence on the ground has increased as global diplomatic efforts to hammer out a peace deal between the warring sides have so far faltered. And as earlier said, the U.S. has formally begun withdrawing its last troops from Afghanistan today, bringing its longest war nearer to an end, but also heralding an uncertain future for a country in the tightening grip of an emboldened Taliban. U.S. officials on the ground say the withdrawal is already a work in progress and May 1 is just a continuation. But Washington has made an issue of the date because it is a deadline agreed with the Taliban in 2020 to complete the pullout. Afghan security forces were on high alert on Saturday for any possible attacks on retreating U.S. troops. U.S. President Joe Biden is determined to end what he called the forever war, announcing last month the withdrawal of the remaining 2,500 American forces would be complete by the 20th anniversary of the September 11 attacks. Meanwhile, Afghan President Ashraf Ghani insisted that government forces, who for months have carried out most of the ground fighting against the Taliban, are fully capable of keeping the insurgents at bay. He also said the pullout also means the Taliban have no reason to fight. Still, General Mark Milley, chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, has not ruled out total chaos. A humanitarian catastrophe caused by unrelenting drought is unfolding in southern Madagascar, where children and adults are on the periphery of famine, according to the UN World Food Program today, in an urgent appeal for international support. Take a look.
The situation is extremely worrisome, scary. They are on the periphery of famine. And these are images that I haven't seen for quite some time across the globe. What I witnessed yesterday, again, with members of the diplomatic and international community, as well as the government, is horrific images of starving children, malnourished, and not only the children, mothers, parents, and the population in the villages we visited. The writing is on the wall, the images are horrific, and what I saw with my own eyes tells me we are heading towards a disaster, and we need to stop that. We're already witnessing villages, whole villages, shutting down and moving to the nearest urban centers. There is no place to flee. With the nearest urban center, if they can make it. But some of the conditions of the people I saw yesterday will not even make the 40 kilometers trek. If a child dies, they bury, there is no reporting, there is no official type reporting to take these numbers. Same thing with grown-ups. We have reached to this point due to 5 years consecutive droughts, climatic changes, and deteriorating food security situation in southern Madagascar. We need the resources yesterday, because in order to turn resources into food in the mouth of people, it will take some time. The infrastructure is extremely bad. It takes forever to get cargo into Madagascar, and then from the ports into the affected areas, given how large the area is and how dispersed the population are.
The Ministry of Health data revealed that 16.5% of children under 5 now suffer from acute malnutrition, almost double the proportion 4 months ago, according to the agency. The Ambovombi district in the Indian Ocean Islands far south has been the worst hit. Acute malnutrition there exceeds 27%, putting the lives of many children at risk, according to WFP in a press statement. Some 1.35 million people have been left in need of emergency food and nutrition assistance by the ongoing drought, which intensified from the start of the lean season in September. Through monthly food and cash distributions, WFP says it has assisted 750,000 people, but hundreds of thousands more are being pushed
deteriorating food
to the brink of
in
famine.
southern Madagascar. We need the resources yesterday.
U.S. authorities opened an investigation into a possible human smuggling operation after police in Houston found more than 90 people crammed into a home in Texas City. Police said they were initially alerted to the house in a southwest Houston neighborhood by a report of kidnapping. Take a look.
Conditions, it wasn't dirty, and that wasn't the point. The point was the way they were put in rooms together. Over 90 people in a two-story home that they were like, they could barely stand. They had to ask permission to go to the restroom. Deplorable conditions. Some of them had eaten in 3 days and haven't had water. So some of them needed medical attention, dehydration. This is a horrible offense. It nearly broke our hearts. And you see officers in there. It's heartbreaking to see people treated that way. We're human beings, and regardless of citizenship, they deserve the right to be here and to be treated respectfully and with human decency. And there's a reason why we can't identify the suspects right now, because people don't want to identify them out of fear. Okay, so we have to know that human trafficking is something that people fear, and they're afraid that their loved ones will be hurt. There's no excuse for people to be mistreated like that, not being fed, not giving the basic common things that you require as a human being, not being allowed to use the restroom, not asking.
Assistant Police Chief D.B. Edwards said police discovered just over 90 people in the modest two-story home. 5 were women and the rest were men. No children were among the group. Edwards said it appears to be definitely more of a smuggling thing and not a trafficking thing. Edwards said some of the people in the house appeared to have COVID-19 and would need to be quarantined. He also did not say where the people in the house came from, but the Texas-Mexico border is a known crossing point for illegal immigrants to the U.S. In other news, the Canada-US border was closed as the start of the pandemic more than a year ago, but not far for Quebecer Paul Maurice Petenod, who has been operating a parcel handoff service from his house, which straddles the international boundary. Take a look.
Au Québec. Moi, je vis dans ma maison. S'il faut que je me rapporte à chaque fois que je me promène d'un pays à l'autre, mais je vais passer ma vie dans une bâtisse, à l'autre bâtisse, à l'autre bâtisse, à l'autre bâtisse. Ça, c'est ma porte de livraison. Tu l'as vu? Hein, c'est mon côté américain. Toutes les livraisons se font par ici. Ici, je suis au Québec. Le Canadien, mon client qui vient chercher sa marchandise, il est au Canada. Quand sa marchandise est du côté américain, c'est ma maison. Je m'en vais aux États-Unis. Je prends son colis et je lui donne son colis. Il est au Canada. Il s'en va à la douane canadienne. Il n'est pas allé aux États-Unis. Certains produits ne sont pas livrés au Canada par le vendeur américain. Et ils ne livrent pas au Canada. Ça prend absolument une adresse américaine. Donc, ils peuvent faire venir ici du côté américain.
Mon gars, il joue au football américain, puis il y a beaucoup de choses qu'on n'est pas capable d'avoir au Canada. Il faut qu'on aille aux États-Unis pour les chercher.
Catherine Piché. Moi, je souhaite que la frontière ouvre. Si tu penses que je suis intéressé à qu'elle reste fermée pour augmenter ma clientèle, jamais. Jamais. C'est le moindre de mes désirs. À Ottawa, ouvrez-la la frontière.
Back here in the Philippines, the DTI Philippines USEC Ruth Castello recommended the continuation of economic activities and business operations under the flexible, modified, enhanced community quarantine in Metro Manila. And these include salons, barbershops, and dine-in services with limited capacity. Take a look.
Oo, USEC Personal Care Services pa lang actually talagang pinupush yan ni Secretary Lopez. We have around 400,000 workers dito sa industry na to. Yan pa lang yung salons and barbershops. Hindi pa kasama yung mga spa, yung mga nail spa or mga massage. Yun pa lang pinag-uusapan natin na paggupit or yung hair care muna. 400,000 na yung madadagdag natin doon sa makakabalik sa employment nila. USEC. And then the restaurants also, recommendation rin ni Secretary Lopez na i-allow yung dine-in pero at a small percentage lang dahil syempre iba rin yung iba rin yung effect ng indoor dahil mas mataas yung risk natin pagka nasa loob tayo ng air-conditioned room na walang hangin or walang masyadong ventilation. According to Secretary Lopez, for indoor dining, siguro kahit mga 10%, kahit po maliit lang, or maybe basta po, bahala sila sa IETF, pero ang recommendation ng DTI is 10% for indoor dining. And then for salons and barbershops, kahit po mag 50%. And then we're also recommending yung outdoor services ng personal care. Pwede po ang mga barbershops, maglagay sila ng outdoor space nila para pati ang salons, doon sila magugupit sa labas ng salon, basta meron silang space para po sa ventilation din. And of course, para rin ma-convince natin ng IETF na 50% i-allow to, kailangan po rin gawin ng mga may-ari o ng operators ng salons and barbershops.
Thousands of people visited the Great Wall of China during the May Day holiday as the rest of the world continues the struggle to contain the COVID-19 pandemic. Millions of travelers crisscrossed China as the Labor Day holiday got underway Saturday, packing out tourist sites, thronging restaurants and visiting family as the vast country edges towards life after COVID. The world's second largest economy is expecting some 265 million journeys by road, train or boat during the 5-day holiday. A Transport Ministry official said this week, numbers last seen in 2019 before the coronavirus struck. Hundreds of day trippers packed out the walkway along the top of the Great Wall of China at Badaling, some 60 kilometers from downtown Beijing, with many not wearing masks. But Chinese authorities sounded a cautious note ahead of the break, warning that tourist attractions should impose restrictions on visitor numbers and have ticketing systems to control the flow of people. Travelers will also need to register at attractions and show their health codes and electronic certificate on their phones to prove they are not at risk of infecting others. Back here in the country, national and local government officials led by the Department of Labor and Employment, or DOLE, Secretary Silvestre Bello III held a simultaneous symbolic vaccination for 5,000 minimum wage workers and OFWs as part of the Labor Day celebration today in Manila. The inoculation of local and overseas workers is under the priority group A4 of the National COVID-19 Vaccine Deployment Plan. Bello urged the workers to be vaccinated since it is the best solution to fight the coronavirus. Of the 5,000, a total of 3,000 OFWs will be vaccinated, while 2,000 local workers were inoculated. The DOLE has prepared a master list of the vaccine recipients to ensure equitable representation of the labor sector in the simultaneous symbolic vaccination. Aside from Manila, the other vaccination sites in the National Capital Region were Lakeshore Hub in Taguig City and Quezon City Covered Walk along Elliptical Road in Diliman, Quezon City. Manatees, the gentle giant mammals of the sea, are dying at an unprecedented rate in Florida. And there are not enough animal hospital beds to handle this crisis. From January 1 to mid-April, 674 manatees have been found dead in Florida waters. According to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, that is nearly triple the number of manatee deaths recorded in the same period in each of the previous 5 years. Take a look.
The biggest reason that we see animals come to our hospital is actually for boat strike injuries. They're very vulnerable to boats. They live in shallow water. About 10 feet or less is where they like to hang out. That's where their seagrasses live that they need to eat. It's been a really rough year for manatees as a whole. We've lost over 600 in the state. I know our food supply has been dwindling too, and there are a lot more people moving to Florida, so we're just having a lot more issues environmentally because there's such a large number of people that live here now.
The issue with the manatees is very concerning for people who live in Florida because they really are a huge part of not only the ecosystem but how we identify ourselves as Floridians. And they're just truly the most gentle animal that lives in this ecosystem. So
Eagle News will be right back. Stay tuned.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Kumanta, sumaya tayong lahat. Saya-saya.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced. Eagle News, because we live in interesting times.
Welcome back. EU Competition Commissioner Marguerite Vestager formally accused Apple of unfairly squeezing out music streaming rivals through its App Store in one of the biggest ever competition cases to hit the iPhone maker. Take a look.
Today the Commission has sent a statement of objection to Apple. Our preliminary conclusion is that Apple abused its dominant position for the distribution of music streaming apps through its App Store and distorted competition in the music streaming markets. Our preliminary finding is that Apple exercises considerably market power in the distribution of music streaming apps to owners of Apple devices. On that market, Apple has a monopoly. First, there is a mandatory use of Apple's own in-app purchase system to buy digital content. Here, Apple charges a 30% commission fee for all purchases throughout its system. This means that music streaming providers cannot sell subscription in their apps without paying a 30% fee to Apple each month on each subscription. Our second concern is about the so-called anti-steering provisions. They limit the ability of app developers to inform iPad or iPhone users of alternative, cheaper subscriptions available elsewhere.
The case stems from a Spotify complaint in 2019 that also accused Apple of unfairly taking a 30% cut from businesses using its store. The European Commission's case, put forward in a statement of objections, is based on a complaint brought by Sweden-based Spotify and others that also accused Apple of making unfair use of the App Store to promote its own Apple Music. Apple firmly rejected the accusations, alleging that Spotify wants all the benefits of the App Store but don't think they should have to pay anything. Now, British startup Verti is developing virtual reality technology so trainee medics can learn safely and train their skills. These sessions help train clinicians in how to explain diagnosis and treatment plans, build trust, and handle challenging situations. Take a look.
Oh, yeah.
The advantage of the virtual reality is they get to see the whole picture. They're not confined to one area. It's reproducible, it's reliable, and it's based on a real-world setting. So it's as realistic as it can be for them, and gives them a really good opportunity to train. Particularly in times when training's been affected recently by a number of different reasons, COVID being one of them.
And normally it's very challenging for people to sort of see this in practice because, as you can see, there's only about 3 or 4 people in the operating theatre. But with this type of technology, you can immerse a room of, say, 15 to 20 people in one of these environments and really kind of scale how people learn and train.
Very important. Anytime you have an issue like this, that we do not...
Different types of history taking. And then sort of you name it, we can sort of put it together. Our mission basically at Verti is to make experiential education affordable and accessible for everyone on the planet. We were already sort of working with hospital systems in places like Africa and further afield as well. And we're planning to scale that up very, very quickly in terms of what we're delivering. And even just within the NHS, we're scaling up very, very quickly.
Yeah, it was so good. Really, really impressed. Really impressed by the graphics, and I think it has a lot of uses across medicine. I think you can use it for surgery, you can use it for general practice, you can use it for all the specialties.
In NBA action, Jason Tatum scored a career-high 60 points as the Boston Celtics stormed back from a 32-point first-half deficit for a 143-140 overtime win over the San Antonio Spurs at the Boston Garden. Tatum's point total equaled Boston icon Larry Bird for the most points scored in a game in Celtics history, and he is the second youngest player ever in the NBA behind Devin Booker to post a 60-point game. The 23-year-old Tatum made 4 free throws in the final 12 seconds of overtime for the Celtics, who roared back from a 29-point halftime deficit to level the score halfway through the fourth quarter on Friday night. Tatum hit a three-pointer with 38 seconds left in the fourth to give the Celtics their first lead, 127-126, since early in the first quarter. Tatum hit a free throw with 18 seconds to play to give the Celtics a 2-point lead, but San Antonio's DeMar DeRozan tied the game with 10 seconds to go to set the stage for a thrilling overtime. Jaylen Brown added 17 points for the Celtics, and Aaron Nesmith had 16 points in the win. DeRozan scored 30 points and dished out the career-high 14 assists for the Spurs, who dropped to 31-31 on the season. UK's Royal Shakespeare Company named its first female head. Britain's here is Patricia Rodriguez from our EBC UK Bureau.
Britain's Royal Shakespeare Company on Wednesday announced Shriti Vadera as its new chair, the first female and person of color to lead the prestigious theatre firm. Vadera, a Uganda-born former investment banker, will take the helm in August after more than a year of intermittent coronavirus restrictions, which have left many theatre and other arts organizations reeling. The Royal Shakespeare Company is a major British theatre based in Stratford-upon-Avon, Shakespeare's birthplace in central England. The theatre was founded in the 1960s but traces its history back to the 19th century through performances in the town. As well as producing plays by the celebrated 16th century playwright, the company also presents works by Shakespeare's contemporaries and modern writers. Vadera said that she was excited to be supporting and championing the theatre as it emerges from one of its most difficult years responding to the global pandemic. After fleeing Uganda with her family following the expulsion of Asian minority communities in the 1970s, Vadera went on to hold a number of leadership roles in large multinational companies. She also served as a development undersecretary in former British Prime Minister Gordon Brown's government and was appointed to the House of Lords in 2007. Performance venues in Britain have been hit hard by months of coronavirus restrictions. Under government plans to reopen the economy, small productions with limited number of attendees will be allowed from May 17. However, most performances are not expected to resume until limits on social contact are lifted, a measure expected to take place on June 21. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I'm Patricia Rodriguez. We live in interesting times.
The London Design Museum has transformed its gift shop into a supermarket, selling a range of products designed by emerging artists to highlight the importance of creativity. Take a look.
And the conversation was all around the idea that the government were allowing shops that sold essential items, essential retail to open, fine. But then there was a kind of question, well, isn't creativity essential? And what is essential? So what we're in now is, of course, a shop that wants to be a supermarket, but is actually a work of art, is an installation.
I think we're just trying to say that creativity is essential, and I think during the pandemic, I don't know, sometimes some budget got cut out in the creative industry, and I think you just realize actually creativity is everywhere, and I think it needs to be carry on.
We have a role to play. We're not just about entertainment or public engagement or spectacle. We're actually about, in a design museum, we're about looking and showcasing and researching solutions for all the problems we're going to face post-pandemic, as well as the problems of the world anyway, in terms of net waste and so on. I mean, placemaking, how our cities look, how we live.
A trial concert in Barcelona testing infection risk at mass events proved successful after only 6 people out of 5,000 reported testing positive for COVID-19 afterwards. Ahead of the show, everyone underwent mass screening and antigen tests. There were no mass tests afterwards, but 15 days later, only 6 people had reported testing positive for COVID-19 of the COVID concert trial held in Barcelona on March 27. Take a look.
Molt bona nit, Barcelona. Bona tarda. També us volia dir unes...
de estas 6 personas que se han identificado, 4 han podido identificar el momento exacto en el que se han podido infectar. Por ejemplo, hay una pareja de asistentes que se han contagiado por la suegra.
Els resultats d'aquesta prova no només impacten en l'àmbit cultural, sinó que ho fan en tots els ordres de la vida social, econòmica, esportiva de la ciutat, i és una magnífica notícia.
Posibles mutaciones. Nosotros, aparte de este diseño de pan coronavirus, de vacuna pan coronavirus,
And before we go, we would like to greet Brother Angelo Manalo. A very happy birthday po from all of us here on Eagle News International, the rest of the staff and the crew. Maraming salamat po. Happy birthday po. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. We'll see you back on Monday. And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.
Te daran l'ok a sparare, spareranno. Ok, siamo.
Adesso tiene ella,